Yeah, one thing I love about ESP is like if I want to take away the stepping and the colas, it's real easy to do. You don't have to rewind it or do anything special. You just remove it. Oh crap! I meant to check recalculate. I'm using a big TV for you guys. That's why everything looks so big. Because last time I did training, I used my regular monitor and everything looks too small. So, okay.
As an old person, I appreciate that.
Right. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get Brandy joined. Good. And I think Cynthia knows what the baseline is, so we'll go ahead and get started. So, a baseline, and I don't have it. Maybe I do. Let me look. If you look at that data set in the PDF I sent, I'm sorry, I should have had it up. But anyway, it describes there's 4 data sets. That fourth one being, well, the first one being the green model, the second one being the blue Infinite Visions or current, or we call it current, or Business Plus, right? And this is loaded when you tell it to, and then you have your daily actuals, which are purple. But there is a fourth data set called the baseline. And the baseline is an exact duplicate of your model, the green columns. And it's for when you want to make a change in ESP and then you want to see what the dollar effect of that change is going to be. So it'll make sense as soon as we create one. But before I create it, I'm going to right click. You can see right now, I just have the 3 data sets that we've been talking about: model, current, and actuals. Green, blue, purple. And when we create the baseline, there's going to be a fourth one right here. So let's say that I've got all of my assumptions done, which we're going to go into right after this. And I want to know what the cost of some stepping and some colas are going to cost me, the district. So the way to do that, the first thing you want to do before you go to the salary plans and add the colas and the stepping is you want to make sure you have a green flag. I always tell people, think about this as like a spreadsheet again. You have one column and you want to make sure it's calculated, and then you'll make another column and have the changes, and then you can see the difference between the 2 columns. That's what we're doing. But we want to make sure before we create a baseline that everything is calculated. So before you save a baseline, you want to have a green flag. So I am going to recalculate with the employees. This is a full recalculation. And if you just joined us, I just took out my stepping and colas because I believe I did that on Tuesday. And I don't want any steps or colas in here yet. So I'm recalculating without any steps or colas. And this baseline, it's just in this scenario only. There is an exception to that. Remind me to tell you about that. It will carry forward to another scenario when you create another scenario. Okay, I have a green flag, beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and set my columns up before I save the baseline just so, I'm sorry, set my scope up. I'm going to clear everything. This button clears all the fields. All I care about are the objects. I don't want it broken out by anything else right now, so I sum just under the object. Okay, so to save a baseline, after you've recalculated, you have a green flag, you go to Tools, Baseline, Save Baseline. And you give it a name. By default, baseline is in there, but I would call this maybe pre-step COLA. And then you can give it a description if you want to. Your last description that you typed will be in there. So if you want to describe why you're saving this baseline, you could say saving before doing steps and COLAs to see what the effect of the steps and COLAs is going to be. If you need to, and I'll show you where to see that description. It doesn't take very long to do. And it comes back and, nothing is different, but notice when I right click now, there's that fourth data set that I've just created, the baseline. And and all I care about here on the financials, and this is on both the employees and the financials, you have the baseline. You have an exact copy. So I right click, pre-step, amount. So, and I'm going to do a delta column between these two columns. So I put them next to each other, left click it, click here. And this is what I expect to see right now. There's no deltas between the baseline and the amount column, right? Because the baseline, as of right now, is a static copy of the model. So now I just go over to the salary plans and I step whoever should be stepped. I'm just going to pick a few. Add a couple of COLAs in here, 2% and a 4%. And the administrators, they only get 1% this year, right? So do that. And I'm going to save. And I need to make sure I go ahead and recalculate, right? Because you want to see all of this roll into the employees and then roll into the financials. So add your note. You can double click probably. And I'm going to recalculate the scenario and make sure I recalculate the employees. Click apply. This will take a minute, minute and a half. Any questions while we're waiting for this to recalculate? It'll all make so much sense as soon as you see it. This baseline, it's only in this scenario. So this baseline will not be in any other scenarios unless I'm going to open Scenario Explorer. What I see a lot of districts do, I'm not sure I can open Scenario Explorer while it's recalculating. When it's doing something like recalculating, you might be able to do certain things, but not a lot, because it really bogs the system down while it's doing it. I think you can switch tabs, but it takes a little bit longer. Okay, it finished. Okay, so let's just go to the financials real quick, and then we'll look at Scenario Explorer. So go to the financials. Now I expect to see some deltas. Okay, so here is the effect of 0112, the steps and the COLAs, right? This is just on the salaries. There's the administrators, the 1%, and I don't know if they stepped or not. We had step, but I don't know if they actually have steps. But anyway, so you can see you now have a baseline to compare your model to, right? So that's the salaries, and then these are the payroll cost. And why PERS bond went down 13, I don't know. I'd have to investigate that. But so you're going to have a combination of changes in your salaries plus the associated payroll cost. So that, on a very simplified level, is the purpose of your baseline. And you can only have one baseline per scenario. So if you were to save a baseline again, then it would already have the steps and colas in the baseline. You only get one baseline per scenario. If you go to the Assumptions tab, and if you click on this very top Scenario Details section on the right over here, it shows you the date and time that you saved your baseline, the label. You could change the label, and then if you had typed a description, it would be here. Any questions about this baseline? So it's for when you want to make a change and you want to see what the dollar effect or even FTE effect is on your budget, so that you can compare it back to the model. Quan, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Tim.
All right. Now, another good way to use the baseline that I've seen a lot of districts do is in your first, because the baseline will, if you create a modeling scenario from a scenario, the parent scenario, the baseline does carry forward into the next scenario. So I see a lot of districts, they'll put in all of their assumptions, but they won't do any steps or colas in here. Then they'll start creating scenarios, and the baseline will carry forward. So you'll kind of always have a copy of your fiscal base with you in your other scenarios. So let's pretend that this scenario was created, that this scenario that I'm in right now came from number one. I would have this baseline here that basically is the number one scenario. So I could always compare it back to the baseline scenario. If that gets too confusing or you have too many baselines, you change the baselines, that's when you want to start opening up the, let me reset my layout here. Like there we go. That's when you would want to, remember we talked about crosstab the other day. Crosstab is very similar to having a baseline, but instead of in one scenario, you actually use different scenarios to compare to each other. So the baseline is in the scenario is very simple. It's just a one copy deal, whereas crosstab is very similar, but you can use different scenarios to compare to each other. But they're both for comparative purposes only. It's read only. The baseline is read only. So I hope that makes sense. I see districts use the baseline very, very often. So it's very simple to use. Now, one thing that we have is if when you clear, and let me show you on the employees, you also have this data set on the employees tab, because it makes a copy of the employees as well. So if you wanted to see how their annual rates changed for some reason, right click, there's the data set, go over here to annual rate. There'll be a yellow annual rate column now. You could do this for any of the columns that you wanted to see, what the effect of the COLAs and step was. So just click it, left click, select it, add the delta. So Shannon Selby here, because of the stepping and the COLAs, she went up 2611 just in annual rate. I don't know why that should not be blue. It should not be editable. That's a bug. That definitely should not be editable. I'll have to write that down. You should not be able to edit these cells right here. I'm not sure why that is that way. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Any questions about the baseline? And just remember, once you save a baseline in a scenario, future scenarios that you create from that will have that baseline in it. So if you want to bring it forward to the next scenario, you can. So it's almost like bringing a piece of the parent scenario into the next scenario that you can then use to compare back to. All right. All right. So let's talk about. Real quick. If you're done, if you don't want the COLA, if it's confusing you, you want to get rid of it, you can go back to this tools baseline, clear baseline. You can even do a restore baseline, and that will copy the baseline back over your model. Like if you were to go in and make a bunch of changes in the model and you didn't like them, you wanted to restore your baseline, you could click restore, and it would copy your baseline back over top of your model. But just be very careful about that, because it would copy every single thing. Any changes that you made in the model, it would copy them over. I don't know how often that restore baseline gets used. Okay, let's move on to the assumptions, which I don't think we've talked about a little bit, but not a lot. And I'm just going to work my way down the list of the tree on the left. And remember, whatever you select on the left, it shows up on the right. So the very first property over here is called scenario details. And here's that baseline information that we just talked about. The second set here is if you have more like a target that you are trying to reach, you can put a dollar number here and an FTE number here. And if you notice on every grid, this keeps track of your general fund dollars and your FTE dollars. All this does is if you're currently under, it'll make this number green and your FTE green if you're under. If you're over, this will be red. That's all it does. It's just a quick visualization to know if you're under or over your target. So if you want to use that, you can. This is just information here about the scenario. Most of this stuff, I would say all of it, you probably will not touch all of this stuff further down. If you have ending fund balance, you need to configure. Let us know. We'll help you configure this. This will push and pull dollars into a certain object to keep you balanced. I only know one district that uses this right now. If you want to do projections, you can do scenario projections. If you want to do that, let us know. They're pretty much just straightforward, straight line projections. This is stuff we set up initially where we know where to go into Infinite Visions or Business Plus and pull a lot of the actuals information. Workers' comp, Fed, FICA tax. This should be your budget start date. This is all about rounding mostly. We've only ever had one district that didn't round to the dollar. They rounded to the $100, but everybody else has always rounded to the dollar. We talked about annualization. This is where the defaults can be set up, where when you annualize an employee, it'll annualize to the work calendar, the employee's work calendar. For most of you guys, this is all set up already. It was set up initially. Grants, update the actuals, and then just some back-end database information. So nothing really here to worry about. Unless you find it and you need to worry about it, then let us know. So the main thing you're going to come to next under assumptions is the calculations, the trigger and the calculations. And mine says mandatory cost. Yours might say fixed cost or payroll cost. Again, you can call this whatever you want. Here's the name if you want to change it. I kind of like payroll cost or fixed cost. Payroll is good because it lets you know that it's the calculations that are mandatory on their pay. And the trigger is the salary accounts. And if you scroll down a little bit further under object groups, you can see one of the groups is called salary accounts. And this tells ESP which objects are considered salaries, so that it knows to then calculate these calculations on it, whether it's in the employees tab or on the financials tab, such as like substitutes. This tells ESP, okay, here's some dollars. We need to calculate these costs on those dollars. And then while we're in the object groups here, the second one here, it just tells ESP which ones are on the employees and to roll these up to the financials tab. So you won't touch these unless you have a new salary account that you need to add. And you can see here that for Oregon anyway, 01, anything that's in 01 is considered a salary. So if you have one that's not a salary, you need to let us know and we can change this, and you can manually pick which ones belong in this group if for some reason something that starts with 01 doesn't belong in here. And we'll talk about utilities in just a minute. We'll get to that. So let's go back up here to these mandatory costs, and we'll just go through these one by one fairly quickly. Luckily, like I said, for most of y'all, everything is already set up, and it's just usually a process of just going in and changing the factors. Excuse me. Okay. So the first one here is employers' PERS. And I know there's a lot of properties here, but the main ones you're interested in is the value column, the source amount value column. And it's saying anything, we're going to calculate this on total wages. If you notice on the employees tab, you have the total wages column. And total wages, I did want to talk about one thing real quick. We don't have time to go over each one of them, but I describe how these columns are built up left to right. Let me reset my layout here, get rid of my Delta column stuff. We'll just go over it real quick. Sorry, I should have had this pulled up already. There should be a PDF that I sent you guys called employee, I think it's called employee grid columns. But it describes how you have your annual rate plus any salary that is, these are all pay components in the blue fields here. Any salary is your total salary, plus any supplemental pay is your total pay. And the wording might be different because this is total pay here, but in this test database, it's total wages. But it's the same concept. If you look on my grid here, the first dollars you get to is the annual rate, and this comes from the salary plans. 100% from the salary plan. This person is on plan 899, and I know they were stepped because they have the purple up arrow. And if you let your mouse sit in there for a second, it will tell you, it will give you some information about that salary plan so that you don't have to switch. If you click on it, you can change a person's salary plan. You normally don't want to override. So it'll tell you which plan they're on, and it keeps going away on me. I'm not going to move my mouse. Let me click here. A little touchy. It'll tell you the plan code, name, work time, if there's a COLA on it. This one doesn't have a COLA. If it was stepped, this one's not stepped. This one, remember, this means they're at the max step already. The purple means that they were stepped. So you can see there it says step enabled, yes. But anyway, so just some information so you don't have to switch back and forth to the salary plans. And this is where the annual rate comes from. And then in between annual rate and total wages, you have any supplemental pay, which we haven't talked about. That's on the assumptions. If you scroll down, they're called pay components and ESP. These are the different types of supplemental pay. And most of those should be set up for y'all's districts already. If not, let me know, we can set them up. But that goes back to the PDF. I can find it. It goes back to the annual rate from the salary plans. I mean, some supplemental pay is part of their salary, right? It does not go to a separate account code. It stays with their main funding account code. So that's just called additional salary, I believe. I can't remember right now. But anyway, that would be their total salary. And then any supplemental pay that goes, this supplemental, sorry about the terminology, there's a lot of overlap. Any supplemental that goes to different account codes, those combined are their total pay. On my screen, it's the total wages. So between annual rate and total wages is any supplemental pay. If you right click, go to the model, you have a whole pay component submenu here. And these are all of those supplemental pays that we have configured on the assumptions tab. I'm just going to click add all. No, I'm sorry, add common. Okay. So this person, let me move annual rate back over here on the left side. So their annual rate plus this person is getting longevity pay and LTD. And I believe LTD is an actual benefit. We'll double check that. And a benefit does not have any payroll costs taken out of it. So it actually belongs over here by the benefits. And we'll get to that in just a second. So you have your annual rate plus any of the pay components that are pay, whether or not they are part of the same account code or they're part of a different account code, there's still supplemental pay that goes toward their total wages. Because total wages is then what is used, right? Because if you look back at the assumptions for the calculations, I click on Social Security, it uses for the source amount total wages. That's what's used to then calculate And then if you put your mouse cursor in here, let it sit, you can see total wages is 41,672. And then all of these fixed costs are calculated on that 41,672 to get $6,451. So then the total wages plus the total cost, I'm sorry, the fixed cost, then we get into the benefits, which are also set up on the assumptions and we haven't talked about. You have your medical benefits plus any medical benefit supplemental pay, such as long-term disability, because this is not included in the payroll cost. So total wages plus fixed cost total, mandatory cost, plus the benefits total, then that gets you to their cost total. So if you look at that document, that will help explain it a little bit. It'll make it a little less muddy, hopefully. It's all about building up their annual rate plus their supplemental pay plus their fixed cost plus their benefits to get to the total cost. Total cost probably really doesn't mean that much to you, right? Because everything is broken out on the financials tab. So really, this cost total column might not mean a whole lot to you, and it really doesn't mean anything. Other than a $41,000, $41,280 teacher or classified ends up costing the district actually almost $66,000 once you add in all of their associated costs and benefits. So I always just think of it as they kind of build up left to right. The first column is the rate plus the supplemental plus the fixed cost, then the medical benefits for the total. Does someone have a question?
Yes, this is Natalie. I had a question.
Whoa.
Okay, maybe not. I'll just write in the chat.
You're echoing real bad, Natalie. I'm not sure why. Okay, she's going to type her question. Okay, go ahead and type it. And any other questions? I know we're kind of going through fast, but we're kind of running out of time, and I still want to talk about the assumptions. So really, understanding these columns are important, and just look that it. Once you look it over, it's pretty it explains it quite well. This document, if I can get it to come back. I'm sorry, this is a brand new computer. I just got it last week. I'm still trying to learn it. So yeah, so it looks confusing, but hopefully the way I explained it, it helps. So Natalie says, what if you needed to add supplemental pay in ESP? How would you attach? Well, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about on the assumptions tab. Supplemental pay is over here on the assumptions under pay components. And we'll get down to that momentarily. Okay, so now we can stay on the assumptions, I hope. So we talked about the total wages. So all you care about, for the most part, is the infinite visions factor and the model factor. And for Social Security, it has the cap, which we explained the other day. So and remember, your infinite visions factor is what they're getting this year. That's going to affect the blue columns. And then the model is what you expect them to get next year. And that's so that you can lay the two columns next to each other if you want to in the grid. And you can say, well, this is what they were getting, and this is what we expect them to get. That's the whole point of the infinite visions or current columns in ESP, is just to say what they're getting versus what they're going to get. So Social Security is pretty easy. Let me go back to PERS here. So PERS as you go down, there is a source amount, but then you get to, there's a qualifier section, but this is not using a qualifier. Some of you might have things with qualifiers where you can say you have to be in a certain salary plan, or you have to have a certain mask. You can qualify employees before it even will calculate on that employee. But this uses a data schedule. If you have a data schedule here, if you notice, you click it, you have 3 data schedules. Those correspond back over on the left. Let me collapse everything down here. Okay. Back over here on the left, under schedules at the bottom, this is where you build your schedules, or we pull these in from Visions. Definitely, most of you have PERS and workers' comp at least. So if you go back to the assumptions, calculations, they have a PERS bond as well. So this is using where'd it go? Sorry. This is using the data schedule PERS. And it's telling ESP to look at the model PERS status. So every employee on the employees has a status. And let me show you how to find that. I'm going to go back to the employees. Let me scroll back over here a little ways. Right click. Anything that is like a selection, like a pull down list, if you go to model, we've gone back and forth about the best name for this, but we just call it list. There is a list submenu. Because when you click on it, there's like a list of selections, available selections to choose from. But I'm going to click on PERS. This is the PERS status of every employee that was pulled in this case from Visions, from your ERP system. Anything that is like a pull down menu like this will be under the list submenu. So here's those exact same options that we saw on the schedule on the assumptions tab. So every employee has a status, a PERS status, and depending on what they have, if you go down here and look at the PERS, here's all the statuses. This will be the rate that gets applied to their total wages. Again, you have a green and you have a blue. You would leave the blue alone, and the green is what you expect them to get next year. One other thing that's very important to understand about schedules, because your lump sum budgeted salaries, they don't have statuses, right? Because they just come in as a lump sum like substitutes. But you still want to calculate PERS on them. So you have a default value. If you click on the schedule down at the bottom of the schedule properties, this default factor will get applied to any lump sum budgeted salaries. So these statuses, these only get applied to employees tab, actual fundings on employees, FTE, that roll up into the financials. This default factor gets applied to the non-FTE salaries that's just lump summed on the financials tab. You can let ESP calculate an average for you. You know, it'll take all the dollars divided by all of the people to get an average factor and use that, or you can manually put in a number that you historically have used. If you don't want it used, you just click no default value, and it will not calculate on the non-FTE salaries. So that's important to know this. For most of you guys, it's already there and set up, but this is a factor you definitely want to confirm as you're going through your new year and confirming all these other factors that what you want to use for next year. And you have that on the workers' comp and any other schedules that you have over here. And the workers' comp is used exactly the same way. Any questions about these calculations? All you're going to be worried about probably is the factors, which are either here or they're going to be down in the schedule. As soon as you click in the schedule, it goes into edit mode. You just come over here and make the changes here. And remember, there's no percent sign anywhere, so you enter them as a decimal. 0.05. For all of these factors, I would recommend, you can make just one or two changes and then recalculate and then go and make sure, because it's easy to mistype a number or a decimal place, and you'd rather catch it earlier than later. And don't forget on the employees, I don't want to say my changes, no. Don't forget on the employees, this fixed cost total is, you can use the tooltip if you want to see that it's being calculated at the rate you expect, or you can right click, go to the model. You have a whole fixed cost submenu where you can pick each individual calculation if you need to and show that column. Like I'll just add the Social Security column. So if you're making a change, you might want to add this column and just see that, make sure you don't have any real big unexpected changes. So you're just changing let's just refresh. One other thing that we have on all of these factors is there is if you want to just put an inflation factor on it, you can. You can put 5% and it would just automatically inflate everything 5% for you. Or even, well, this one's percent, but if it was a dollar one, you could just put a dollar amount, it would inflate. I think probably better to put in the actual rate so you know the rate that it's actually going to use for this. In this example anyway, probably better to put in the rate. And there's probably not a chance that everything would go up exactly the same percent anyway. Questions, guys, about the calculations? They're pretty straightforward. If you need to make a new one, like I had a district earlier that was going to make a new one, you can select one that is similar to the one that you're going to make, if it exists, and you select it, and then you just click the green plus. And the first thing it's going to ask you is, where is this going to roll up to? And it's going to add it right underneath it. Then you can go in and start making changes. But it's almost Social Security acted like a template for the next one. That's why it's good if you find one that's kind of similar to the one that you're going to use, you can use it and then go through, make your changes, and then save it. And then you'll have a new calculation. So I added this. I don't want to keep it. I'm just going to refresh. And that will get rid of any changes that I made. So let's go back to object groups down here now. We talked about what these two are, the salary ones. And let's talk about this utilities one. I need to make a quick change real quick here. Let me save this and I'll be back in just 30 seconds. Let me fix this real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, so another object group that gets used a lot is called the utilities group. And the way it works is, and you can do quite a few different things with object groups. You just make a group of objects and you're going to tell ESP we're going to do something to that group. This one is a special one called utilities. And this is just a quick way of adding an inflation factor. And what we've seen is most districts use it on their utilities. It'll just take the working scenario, the values from the working, and just add 5% to it. So let's go look at it real quick on the financials. 03. I think I have to recalculate. I just added it. Now, since I'm making a change to the financials, I do not have to recalculate the employees. But what this does, you have a source column here, and I think for most everyone, you're going to want to choose either your working or your adopted. It takes that value for those budget items and adds 5%, and that will be your budgeted values. Okay, here we go. So here's those 4 objects with an inflation group on them. It took the working value, it put it into the model, which was already in the model. You can see actually, because of my baseline, there it is. It still lives there. And then it added 5%, and then that's my new amount. You could have gone in here manually and put a 5% variance in here and done it, but this is just an easy way to do it, and it does all of them for you at once. So if you have other objects that you want to do an inflation group on, you can. You can just build a group, and if everything is using the same percentage. And then you could actually go negative as well. If you wanted to put a negative inflation factor on it, it would be a green arrow going down. The only time I've ever seen these used, though, are on the utilities, but it doesn't mean you can't use them however you wanted to use it. Any questions about the inflation group? Utilities? You can either right click and say edit object group, and then you can just go through and pick which ones you want, or you could put an account mask in. Like I could put in object 01 or 0325 through 0328. That would work as well. And give it a name if you want to. Okay. But from everyone, I believe you probably already have those utilities set up. All right, let's talk about benefit plans. This is a big piece. Benefit plans are obviously the medical plans. The way it works is usually you have, and I can't remember, Beth, for you guys how it's broken out, but for the Oregon districts, you have usually administrators, certified, classified, and then a no benefits, which most people, there's nobody on that. And this district has a superintendent. So let's. I'm gonna skip administrators right now. Let's just look at certified district benefit plans. So over here on the right, you don't worry about anything until you get to the qualification level. And this is where it starts on level 1. And this district set up where anybody that's 0.5 FTE will get $1,430 a month. But next year, they're going to get $1,700 a month. You would just change this to $1,700, save, and recalculate. Let me look, this other level. Well, all of these are 0.5. Some districts have because you can have different levels of FTE getting different amounts of money. You could qualify them. Oh, actually, no, wait, this one does have 2 levels. Sorry, it was collapsed. Okay, so here's one where 0.75, they're getting $1,475. That doesn't make sense. And then 0.5, they're getting $1,549, which is more than $1,470. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, you can see that it uses, you can base them off FTE. I believe in Washington, they use work days. You have to work a certain number of days in a year before you qualify. Oh, I see. This is reducing it by 25%. If you're between 0.5 and 0.75, you're only getting 75% of 1549. Every district wiggles their numbers a little bit different. But again, for most of you, these levels should be set up already, and you might not have to change them. The only numbers you'll be changing probably is the model monthly benefit amount. But I want to show, especially the new people, how these dollars get from the assumptions to the employee. If you go to, okay, so you have your benefit plans here. Let me clear my changes. You have your benefit plans, and they are assigned, if you look on the salary plan tab, benefit plans are assigned to salary plans. So the classified employees benefit plan, if you notice, these are the same ones that we just saw on the assumptions tab. These get assigned to the salary plan. So anybody that's on plan 8, salary plan 8, which I believe these people are, they will have that classified salary benefit plan. If you get your tooltip here, if you look down right here, there's the benefit plan, classified employees. And if we scroll over to the right, 17,700. So that's the yearly. which is $14.75 a month, which is what we saw on the assumptions tab. So benefit plan based on their FTE, of course. Benefit plans are created on the assumptions tab, and then they're assigned to salary plans, and then that's how the employee gets their benefits based on which salary plan they're assigned to. That just happens to be the way, I guess, the negotiations work. For the administrators, we usually pull in you can see that there's no qualification levels. We usually pull in the actuals because they are usually like all over the place. They negotiate their own benefit plans. So we look for, I'll show you these binoculars. It might not be working for this database. You guys can try it. We'll look at that. But this binoculars will do a live lookup into your ERP and see section 125. Hang on, let me look at another district real quick. It's Park Rose. See how theirs are set up. Oh, they're actually assigning dollars to their administrators. But you can set it up that under this infinite vision deductions, you can set it up to actually pull in the actuals. That's not working for them either. Okay, well, hopefully it's set up for you guys and pulling in the actuals.
Hey, Tim, I got a question.
Go ahead.
So when the time comes when I really build out my model, right, for real, do you and Scott ever, will you guys look at what we've done just to make sure there's no glaring mistakes, right? Where you come back and say, hey, Darren, we did an audit of your model and you and Anthony may or may not wanted to do this. However, we noticed, and give us kind of like an audit of our work.
I'm going to say the answer to that is generally no. We don't go through, because we have a lot of districts. We can't go through and know what you guys are thinking when you do something. We do run some of those audits, like when you recalculate, to look for any glaring mistakes, but generally no, we don't.
Okay. No worries. I just was asking.
Yeah. Now, there has been times where, you ask a question about something, and while I'm in your database looking around or in your scenario, I might see something that looks weird and ask you about it. But no, we don't specifically go into each district and look for issues.
Okay.
Because honestly, every district does things different. And we would be chasing our tails trying to figure out that. I was hoping to see. I don't know why. Maybe I have a connection problem with back divisions. But okay, so you guys, for administrators, it should be set up to use actuals, and then this is a case where you might want to use, under the factors on the benefit plans, the inflation amount for the administrators. For the other ones, you can go in and just type in the number. I see here Tammy over at Park Rose, she used the inflation amount field. She just added 2%, which will automatically go through. And I didn't know this, but they're using work week hours. I think that's the first district I've ever seen anyone do that, in Oregon anyway. So to qualify, you have to work at least 31 hours a week, or 20, if you're between 26 and 31, you get this amount. I thought all Oregon districts used FTE, but maybe not. But this is Park Rose. They're in Portland. They're using work week hours to qualify. But if you are using the actuals for the administrators, this is how you would inflate their values for next year. You just put an inflation factor on it. You can put a dollar amount or a percent. You'll notice all of these calculations, benefit plans, supplemental, have these element strings. These are always the results of where they're going to roll into. They come from down at the bottom on the right, the mask of where they're going to roll to on the financials tab. So always be aware of that. When you make a change, you save, you recalculate, you can check it on the employees and then check it on the financials to make sure the values. And these benefit plans, these are only on the FTE salaries on the employees. It does not calculate on any of the lump summed salaries on the financials tab. Only employees that are assigned to salary plans. And again, on the salary plans. So this is all stuff you want to go through your new year, is making sure that the correct benefit plans are being assigned to the correct salary plans. Again, this is Park Rose's adopted from last year we're looking at right now. They gave everybody 3%. You can see only some plans stepped. This little green plus is something you should know about. It means that something in this tree is different. Okay, so let's look at this 3%. It doesn't have the green plus. That means if you expand it out, the 3% is in every field down to the step level. If one of these is different, you're going to get a plus, because most of the time it's going to be, you're not going to have the plus. It's going to be the 3%. You want it on every step within that plan. So in this case, the work days must be different on one of these plans or one of these grades or steps. Just follow the green plus. Okay, so here. So the green plus is just to alert you that something is different, and that's probably just something that was keyed into visions and we loaded it, but it's an empty salary, an empty step. But the green plus is to alert you that, hey, something is different in this tree. Because most of the time, things are consistent within each plan. And when you do a COLA, you give everybody every step the COLA. So in this case, some people are getting, let's look at this one. So you see only these first 3 steps were stepped. The second ones were not. So that's why the green plus is there. So unless you specifically have a reason, you shouldn't have a green plus on your salary, any of these fields, unless you specifically have a reason. And then remember, the work days is important because that's how we get to the hourly rate. We divide the annual rate by the work time, which is work days times work hours, to get the hourly rate. So if the work days are different, that's going to really affect your hourly rate. This rate. This one doesn't have anything, so it doesn't make a difference. But if this should be 191 and it's 260, the hourly rate is going to be way lower than it's supposed to be. Because any employee on this salary plan, we take their work time and multiply it times this hourly rate to get their annual rate. So that's why it's important to make sure these work days and work hours are correct, because it can have a big impact on anybody that's on that plan, that step. One thing while I'm here, I didn't show anybody this yet, but if you're ever on the salary plan tab, right, we show you the dollars on a certain plan or step or grade and the number of FTE. And if you ever want to see, I wonder which employees those are, you can right click and click on employees, and it will switch you to the employees tab. It will show you the people just on plan 33, grade 4, step 11. If you ever need to just see which specific employees are on 33, 4, 11. So just a little shortcut. And then once you're done with this scope, you just click the red to clear it back. All right, let's go back to the assumptions. Any questions about medical benefits? Hopefully you're not doing too much except just changing the factor on the different levels, the qualification levels. You're only changing this value. And again, you have a blue value and you have the model green value, what they're getting now versus what they expect to get next year. Okay, I'm going to get out of Park Rose because you don't want to, we're always very careful when we're in someone's production database. We don't try to change any numbers. But also they locked this scenario down here on the right, it's locked. So I couldn't make changes even if I wanted to. That's why it's good to lock a scenario if you don't want any inadvertent changes. Okay, so the big, one of the biggest, well, yeah, they're all big, but this is the last big piece, is the supplemental pay. And there's really two types of supplemental pay. One being, do you want to pull in the actuals that are already being paid to employees, or do you want ESP to calculate based on a certain qualification or factors? So, and then the second part you have to ask yourself is, where's it going to roll up to? The default account mask. Here's the results section, the default account mask. So I'm going to click on longevity, start at the top. You can give it a name. If it's a real long name, you can put a short name in for the column heading, so you don't have the real long name in the column, and it'll keep it short. While we're talking about columns, let's go back to the employees. Remember, if you write, so here's that longevity one we were just looking at, but if you want that again, it's right click, model, and it's under the pay component. Here's all of those supplemental pays that we're setting up. They're already set up. So longevity, let's see if this works. I hope it does. So this is doing a live look back in Infinite Visions, and it's looking for the supplemental pay, anything with the word longevity in it. So this is how you set it up. You have 3 different options here. You can use an account mask. You can use the pay type filter, which this is. If you have the name correctly in your ERP, my connection might not be good. You guys should try it and see if it works. It should work. But all of these supplemental pays live in your ERP, Visions or Business Plus. And we can go, ESP can go and find them and pull them into ESP and assign them to the employees. Yeah, okay. Mine. Hopefully y'all's is faster than mine. I'm not local to the district, so it has to jump through a bunch of hoops to find it. It's the same as, or it's very similar to when you do the right click. Infinite Vision details or Business Plus details. But mine is not happy about the connection. Darren, have you tried that? Is it working on yours? If you click the binoculars?
To be honest with you, I'm just following along with you.
Oh, okay, no problem.
My plan is once you post those videos, that's when I was really going to take some time. It's difficult because I'm away from my desk. I'm in Anthony's office, but we're up next to an elementary school, and these kids like to pound on the walls. And so it's very distracting to try to watch you and then play along. So that is the path I've kind of made for myself, was just to watch you and then go do it at some point when I'm at home and I don't have kids pounding on the walls. And
right. Okay. Sorry, guys. I had to close ESP. That timed out. Let me get her back. Let me try it with Park Rose. All right, here's Park Rose. They have one called Athletics. Okay, so that worked. Okay, so this is Park Rose. So this went and looked at all of the supplemental pay and pulled back anything that had the word asterisk, athletic, asterisk. The asterisk being wild card. All right, so you can set up a pay type filter and use words to find the you're telling ESP what to go look for in your ERP system. And a thing to do when you're first setting up your supplemental pay is, once you narrow it down, and then you would want to go through and make sure these are everybody you want to bring in, right? Because there might be something like this one, athletic director. You might not want to bring those dollars in because maybe that's going to go somewhere else. But you would want to go through, because I've seen the word coach used, but there's a lot of different types of coaches, right? There's like a chess coach, and that wouldn't really follow under the athletic coach. So you have to be careful what you use. Go through and make sure that these are what you want to include in this supplemental pay component. If you're like, yeah, these are the people I want, you can always, so these are the actual amounts that are being paid to these employees for their athletics. You can always highlight this column. Let me try that again. Hang on. So 328,427. So hopefully once you configure the supplemental pay in ESP, you're going to be close. You should be pretty dang close to, sorry, Windows 11, getting used to that, $328,000. But now we get into, so that's where you set it up. You also have the pay type list. If you double click, it's actually a pull down list. Oh, this scenario is locked. I'm going to unlock it just for a second. Don't worry, I'm not going to change anything. You have to refresh. This should be a pull down menu here.
But wouldn't it be fun, Tim, to mess with people?
No, no, no.
I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding.
We have enough issues not messing with people. I don't need to mess with people. There we go. So you also have, this pulls in all of the pay types based on this word right here. So if you wanted to go through and check these, you could do that as well. Sometimes you might want to use the word here because this will filter what you see in the pull down. If I were to empty this word out, I would get all of their pay types. And I've seen some districts where it's thousands because they don't get cleaned up in Visions or Business Plus, and you'll get every single supplemental pay that's ever been created. And then you have a really hard time finding which one to select. So try to use a word to narrow down what you want in there. And that seems to work. Or you could even use an account mask, because I noticed, let me find, oh, I lost that form already. Everything was 0131. So you could put an account mask and say every object 0131. But if you have anything that's 0131 that you don't want included, then that won't work. So it's really trying to figure out, using these fields, which actuals you want to pull into ESP. Now I'm going to right click and lock it. Lock this scenario so I don't accidentally make any changes. Now let's talk about, since those are actuals, right? And this is, this pay component was already built. So when they reloaded the actuals, or they reloaded the employees, these values will come into ESP with it. If this pay component was not set up, then none of these pay components would have come in. So if you create a new supplemental pay using actuals, you have to make sure you go to and when you create a new one, this will automatically be checked. Update model factors on next reload. You check that box right there. When you create a new supplemental, that will automatically be checked, because you're telling ESP use the actuals, but you're going to have to reload the employees to get those actuals. So, but it's only going to copy into the model just this supplemental dollars. It won't overwrite anything else. It's just going to create this supplemental. It'll just create this column that I've already reset, unfortunately. Right click, model, pay component, add common. So this is really key to understanding how this supplemental works for actuals. When you create the pay component, the supplemental pay, it will not just automatically be in your model, and it won't even be in your blue columns. That's weird. Those are empty. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this 360, when Tammy created this pay component, this would have been empty if it used the actual. Well, here's the athletics. Let me. Like I said, a good way to do this, to look at your grid, I think, when you're doing things like this, is just sum. I don't really need it broken out by anything right now. I just want a list of all the employees. And it makes it easier when you're sorting if you have it this way. So let's do descending. So, and the red dot means it's a supplemental, right? It's going to, so this is the same 0131 account code. This is not following their their main pay code. It's a supplemental pay. That's what the red dot means. If it's a blue dot, that means it does follow their same account, their parent account code, like 0111, 0112, 0113. But if I would have just created that athletics pay component, these dollars would not be there because these are pulled in from the actuals. Let's look at Brian Timothy's. I can't even look at that unless I unlock it. I'm going to unlock it again. This is dangerous. I don't like doing it. Right click, infinite vision details. Now, things might have changed, right? Because that was set up 8 months ago. Yeah, I don't even see his supplemental athletic here anymore. But oh, maybe it's that one, retention stipend. Well, actually, this is not, but I don't see athletic. Okay, but anyway, once you reload and you have that checkbox checked, it will find anybody that matches that word athletic. And if you have that checkbox checked, which was copy into the model, it would copy only these dollars into the model. So this is a way of when you create a supplemental pay of getting the dollars into the model. And then after it copies, update model factors on next employee reload. After it copies, this box will automatically uncheck. So once the dollars are in the model, it will not keep updating their supplemental. So if you have more changes, more athletic, more coaches, you would have to go in, reload. Now, if you do a reload and a full copy, like the tools, employees, if you go to tools, employees, reload employees, there is a copy to model. It will reload them into the blue and then copy them into the green, including the pay component. Copy to model and recalculate. Okay, so just remember, anytime you're doing something new with actuals, you're going to have to bring them into the model. If you don't, this will just stay 0 until you copy, reload, and copy. You can just, if you just reload without copy, they'll be just in the blue. It will bring them into the blue columns, but they won't be into your model. And once they're into your blue, you could say update model factors from Infinite Visions data set, and then that would copy them from the Infinite Visions into the green, from the blue into the green. But most of the time, you're just going to do both processes at once. Reload the employees into the blue, and you check that box. And this is just a reminder that if you did have anything in there, it would overwrite. Anytime you're going to write into the model, we just give you a warning. But it says pay component model factors will be copied from Infinite Vision factors on the next employee reload. You must reload the IV employees to complete this. So this is only if you're going to create a new supplemental pay. Natalie, is that making sense to you? Yes, okay. Now this is just one of the 2 ways we talked about. One is we pull in the actuals. The other is ESP. I'm going to relock the scenario. ESP calculates it based on something. Let's see if we can find one of those. Most districts have gotten to just using the actuals. And then if you're using the actuals, you're probably going to want to use the inflation factor. So you take what they're currently getting paid and you add 3% to it. That's what this would do, or a certain amount of dollars to it. Some of these, I don't know why they even got them. Sometimes it's just they get zeroed out, but people just leave them in there. If you want to override, because we pull in your actuals and that's a set number. If you want to override, you have to select this button here under factors. Right? If you put, let me go back to athletics. We're pulling in under the loading, we're saying just pull that in, but if you want to override it, you have to make sure you select allow factor override. Then you can manually go in there and change a value if you need to. And then in the results section here, you can prorate by FTE, keep funding separate if you need to, work time if you have to use that, don't roll it into the financials, a lot of different, but this is one that is, this, I gotta unlock it again. This helps control whether or not, these are those, I have to refresh, I think, after I unlock. This tells ESP if it's going to stay with their parent funding, which is include in salary, if it's going to be a separate funding on the, this is on the employees, it's not where it rolls into, but on the employees. If it's a separate one, it's going to be a supplemental pay or a supplemental position. That's what we were talking about earlier, whether or not it's part of their salary or if it's a different account code. Really doesn't make a whole lot of difference because it's about where it's going to roll to on the financials. But if it's a different account code in your ERP, you probably want a different account code in the employees tab. But this default result mask is where it's going to roll to on the financials. This additional, for this district, this is one of those supplementals that is a benefit. See, it says include in benefits for the pay component type on the result. So the dollars in here will not be included in these calculations, payroll calculations. So if I were to go to the employees tab, I think it was this one, additional TSA. If you were trying to figure out where it would belong over here on the right under between benefits and benefits total. The benefits plus this pay component, this supplemental pay is a medical benefit. And there is no payroll cost taken out of there for benefits total. So if you need help setting up a new pay component, again, it's where it's ideal to find, if you have a new one, find one that is at least somewhat similar, and you just press the green plus up here, and it will create a template, and then you can go through and just make changes to the new one. And remember, if you're pulling in actuals, if it is a new one, this update model factors on next employee will be there. But remember, you're going to have to reload your employees after you do this. And when you reload your employees, it's going to update all of your blue rows here. So it's a very big step, but it's only going to copy the actuals for that pay component into the model. It won't copy anything else into the model. But all of these blue, this date down here would reflect to when you do it, like today's date, and this will be as of you reloading it. So it's important to understand that you do have to reload. I wanted to find one that so here's one. Okay, all right, okay, this is good. This is one that uses a data schedule. And we know there's data schedules are over here, down here. This uses admin HRA. Sometimes you'll see this when you open a schedule up, it'll automatically edit. And that's usually at times it's just maybe rounding. It doesn't hurt to just go ahead and save it the first time. And then the next time you open it, it will already, this happens on New Year's a lot, where we pull in values and then when you first look at it, it rounds the numbers and then you just save it and you'll be okay moving forward after that. So for this pay component, depending, they must have an HRA. Let's go to the employees. I don't want to save, so. That would be, where would that be? Anybody know? That would be under the list, right? Because any type of status. So I don't know which status that would be. I'm not sure what the HRA is, but it's one of these statuses. Maybe insurance status, I don't know. But anyway, these employees have a status, and then based on that, it's getting annoying. Let's refresh. Based on the employee status, that will give them, that's how it's qualifying them based on their status and giving them that rate. Now this is a dollar rate, it's not a percent rate. Oh, it's looking at their, oh, I see. Okay, it's looking at their salary plan, depending on what grade they're on, to give them this certain amount of dollars. So if they're on plan 1, grade 240 days director, they're getting this in that pay component. So when you're first making a supplemental, the first thing to ask yourself is, am I going to use actuals or am I going to have ESP calculated? You can use a schedule. You could say, you could put qualifiers. You could say only people on a certain plan, or only people on a certain mask, a certain object, or a certain center, or a certain function. You can qualify people. If you're going to have ESP calculated for you, you'll be worried about the qualifier and the data schedule and these factors right here. If you're not, if you're pulling in actuals, you won't care about qualifier, a data schedule, or factors. You'll mostly just care about the inflation factor here and inflating it. I've seen more and more districts are moving toward just pulling in the actuals and then just using the inflation factor on it. I know this is a lot to go through, and hopefully all of you have these set up already. And you're just changing the factors. But if anyone needs help setting up new supplemental pays, let me know. And never be afraid to reload your employees, because you're only reloading them into the blue. And as long as you don't check that box, copy into the model, which if you do, you will get a warning. You don't have to worry about it. And I've seen some districts where, since the dailies are running every day, the purple, you could just completely hide the blue columns, because that's old information, right? As soon as you reload, it becomes stale information. You could just right click, hide. But for these supplementals, we do not pull in the actuals. So don't look for the supplemental on the actuals. I don't think we do. Let me check. I could be wrong about that. I didn't think we did. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. No, it doesn't appear we do. Maybe we will at some point. But so remember, if you have a new employee that shows up and they need that athletic pay component, you probably would be better off maybe, and there's only one or two, just click the allow override, and you could manually just go in here and add it. Or you could just go back if you wanted to bring them in again. If you have some new employees, go back to the athletic supplemental pay, check this box, and you're going to have to reload again, which is fine, but you're going to update your blue columns, and it's only going to copy just the athletic supplemental pay into the model. So either you manually enter it, or you're going to have to copy it. You're going to have to reload and copy into the model. We don't have the ability of reloading just one employee right now. When you reload, it's all the employees, but you can just copy one employee into the model. Don't forget, you always have the right click, copy from actuals or copy from infinite visions, or there's even the copy from baseline now, because we created that baseline, or they created a baseline at some point. Reminds me, I better lock this scenario again. Okay, come on, there's got to be some questions about the assumptions. Anything? I know they're a little complicated. And for new districts, this is where we spend most of our time initially, is setting up these calculations, most of the time is set up the benefit plans and the pay components. Oh, one thing else I wanted to show you guys. Once you add the column for the supplemental pay, notice you have, we call it like a hamburger menu, a little 3. Then if you right click on that, you have a new submenu, the athletics submenu. Because this number is actually built up of, let me show you. Athletics here. Just click add all. So this, is it using a plan code? I didn't think it was, but it's whether or not it's enabled or not. And that goes back to over here on the assumptions, athletics. Under the qualifier, you have allow override. That makes this enable on or off. Notice they're light green, so they are editable. They're not right now because I have this scenario locked, but these would become editable. So if you say, well, this guy's not going to get it next year, you could just unenable it just for him. but you would have to go and turn on allow override under the qualifier. Qualifier just means yes or no, they get it. That's all. It's just, it controls this box right here. And then the other one is the factor override. It controls the percent and the dollar amount. By default, it's 100%. And then the dollar amount. I don't know where they got these numbers from. I don't know. I'm looking at an old year, so I'm not sure. But if you allow the override for the factor here, you could also then go in and change either the factor or the percent. If you have like, if this was prorate by FTE and say they were 0.5 FTE, this would be 50%. The factor would be the full amount, but by 50% to get to the final number here. So if you need to override either the factor or whether or not they get it, make sure you check that box, those boxes. All right, let's open it up to any questions about anything in ESP since we're coming down to the last few minutes. I know it seems like a lot at first, but once you start using it, and hopefully, once you understand that there's nothing magic going on, it's just either numbers that we're calculating or numbers that are loaded from your ERP system. And always be in the mindset of, what do we expect to happen next year? Because you're always working on next year's budget. Do all of these people that we just pulled in with the athletics stipend, are they going to be there next year? Or is anything going to happen? Are we going to have new type of athletics next year that you need to account for? Because you can create budgeted positions and give the budgeted positions these stipends as well. If you expect to hire some new people next year, you can assign them supplemental pay as well to the budgeted positions. We're probably going to have in late January, probably another like brush up training, maybe for like just go over things again a lot quicker, just things to do for your new year. And remember, if any of you guys are in your test database, if you look down here in the database name and it says PRD, that's good. If you're in one that says TST, you're probably going to make sure you switch back to your production database before you start doing any real work. And if you want to delete your new year, maybe you've done some things while we've been training, don't forget they haven't created their new year yet. Let me go back to my test database. You open up Scenario Explorer, right click, delete scenario. Or you don't have to delete the scenario. You can always just go and reload the employees.
You too. I'm on mute, so it's all good.
You're not on mute.
Oh, wait, I'm not. Let me put me on mute. Sorry.
You were on mute. Now you're not on mute. But if you've made a bunch of changes on the financials or in your assumptions, then you might want to just delete, right click, delete scenario. Remember, you have to type in the full name to delete it. And then you can right click on your last year's adopted. And if you don't have it, remember you have to change the status to adopted. Hopefully everybody has theirs set to adopted. And then you can right click and select create new year scenario and start fresh. And remember, when you create your New Year scenario, really the only thing that's being carried forward are your assumptions. These assumptions get carried forward. But it reloads your employees, it reloads your working, and copies all of that into the model as of the day you create it, the day and time you create it. All right, well, I guess if there's no questions, I thought there might be at least a few questions. We're here, just email us if you need us. I had someone send me an email today. I'm not going to say who it was, but they sent me an email and it looked just like this. Well, no, I can't show you. Anyway, it was only part of the screen. I didn't know what database they were in. I couldn't see a lot. So please, if you send us screenshots, make sure it is from top left to bottom right, the full screen. Because the more information we have, the better. Because especially if it's like an error or a problem, the first thing we do is we try to duplicate it. Because once we know how to duplicate it, then we know how to fix it. So the more information between the picture and if you can describe exactly what you were doing, then the quicker we can get it find it and fix it.
No, got it, Tim. I want to thank you. So this is Darren. I want to thank you for this. This has been a great introduction. You'll probably get more questions from me once I get those videos, right?
Yep.
And then on my own time at home with no kids, I can start to like replicate what you've done. And then as I ask you questions, maybe you might want to save them and then post them somewhere so that if someone, I don't know, like a Q&A type thing where we have a forum to go and go, oh, hey, Brandy had the same question I had. And
yeah, I've been pushing Scott toward that. We should get like a forum where people can ask questions. I can answer them and everybody can see it, because I get asked the same questions quite often. And we're working our way toward that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, but day 1 and day 2, I was right there with you, but it got complicated.
Right.
And part of it's that I'm new to kind of like this local government and a school district. I come from federal experience. And so just terminologies, that kind of stuff. So that's why it was more, okay, stop trying to follow along with you with my system open, just listen, try to soak it all in and then go back and then try to replicate what you've done with those videos. That's been my strategy.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's, I spent, the good first 2 days just explaining how ESP works and what it does, because I think that's key to understanding what you want to do moving forward, knowing where the numbers are coming from, why they're there, how they get into the model. That to me is the most important part. You got to understand that before you can start, working in it.
Right. But what was confusing me is just that I don't have experience in terms of payroll, so to speak. On a forest fire, I can pay contractors, heavy equipment and that kind of stuff. But here it's like a whole new understanding. And that's where I'm like, okay, trying to understand. I mean, I get as an employee, right? Like I get benefits and all that kind of stuff. So some of those things make sense, but some of the other things, and I have a lot of employees here at this school district. That's where it was like, okay, I just need to step away and just listen for now and then come back and hit it hard. So
yeah, we found that especially with newer districts that all of a sudden, because of this, you got to start working closer with HR, payroll, because you're getting the employees squared away. And a lot of times when you reload the employees, it shows there's miscodings, over 1 FTE, positions not closed. And then you've got to go to them and say, hey, this needs to be fixed. So there's a lot of that. All right, guys. Well, shoot me an email. Emails are the best. Phone calls are okay, but emails are best because it gives me a chance to switch to your database and look it over and think of an answer. Those work the best, but just try to give me information about what your question is about. And then me or Scott usually get back to you pretty quick. I guess if there's nothing else, thank you everyone for showing up. And I will be sending out an email Monday or Tuesday, depends on how I feel, with the videos. Because I know you guys are anxious to watch all of this over again. I might even watch it just, for fun. And all right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.